So the 4 homes are a little over an acre. And so this home's been abandoned for a while. And then also we'll include this 914 Lindsay. And then this house as well that currently has renters in it. And so they will be moving out probably in about 90 days. So all 4 of those homes will be demolished and become McAdams Haven. We'll be putting in 84 units to replace these 4 single-family homes, and that will service people who are experiencing chronic homelessness with disabilities. I found this piece of land, it was about 1.5 years ago. And at that point, we started looking at the feasibility. You have to run market studies, and then getting things together for the LIHTC application and everything that the city needs as well, so that we can get a resolution of support. We were awarded last July for the LIHTC application. And then from there, it's been just a lot of pre-development with the city and working with city staff to try to get things moving forward. We have timelines that we have to meet with the application with the state of Texas, and we have to have everything built within like 15 months of breaking ground. So some of the roadblocks we've come across as we've gone through this process is that there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through with planning and zoning. One of the things that we're having to do here is we're having to put in a whole lot of parking that's not even needed, and which is costing more money to develop this property. It's shown that MHMR's current households that are a part of their connection program, which are the same individuals we'll be serving, they have 4 cars between 60 households. And we're being required to put in additional parking that's not needed. And again, driving up the cost. There's a lot of things that, like parking, some zoning restrictions that drive up the cost of affordable housing and cause time. And homelessness is a housing problem. And so, you know, I want to know as a candidate what you're going to do to make it easier to get affordable housing on the ground. I want to know why our property that that we were putting in, which is an affordable housing, has tons of 30%, which we can hardly get developers to do, has paid $600,000 in impact fees to the city. That is making it impossible to create affordable housing. And until we have these deeply affordable units, we are going to continue to see a homelessness problem. So what are you going to do to make a difference for our city?
So that's just a jumping off point for us, but there are specific questions in there. And Brian?
Yes.
We'll start with you.
Yes.
60 seconds, and then we'll get into it. 60 seconds around the board.
No, I'm really glad Carrie led off on some of those questions. I think it's really important. The McAdams with the wraparound support services are going to be that next step up out of ODB into a permanent supportive wraparound structure that will allow you to get back into Alice household status. And one of the things I noticed serving on council, and particularly serving on the Development Code Review Committee, is she's absolutely right. Parking minimums are getting in the way of all kinds of things. We should let those be controlled by the market rate. We're overparked in some areas and underparked in others, and those forces need to be reduced. And another way we can help that is with fast tracking pre-approved permitting plans that have been already run through development services. So, yes on absolutely killing parking minimums, yes on fast tracking, one of the things that we worked on this last council was, and I'm probably hitting my 60 seconds here, but we worked on trying to forgive impact fees, especially for roadways, and I was pushing for water and other utilities that we control as well, for exactly the reasons that Carrie brought up.
Cool. Speaking of which, I am going to get my timer going.
That's fair.
There's a timer over there, but I want to have one on hand anyway. Okay, let's do Shannon.
Yeah, I appreciate how this question was really connected to the idea of transportation. I think both housing and transportation are such married concepts. I think at the end of the day, too, though, like the most almost, I guess, special thing that I would say about what's coming with this new supportive housing development is the idea that within the housing development is wraparound services, which is things like counseling, access to health care, and other social services that are designed to actually help people overcome their situations and overcome poverty. However, I do think that this is just a Band-Aid on a larger issue, and I don't know how much time I have left, so I'm going to leave it at that right now.
All right, Mr. Watts.
Sure. This is really what they would call in the legal field a case of first impression. This is one of the first apartment buildings that I can remember that's being built under this program, where they're actually meeting the needs of 30% average median income households, which are the poorest households in our community. The city is losing $6 million a year in tax exemptions, property tax exemptions for quote unquote affordable housing. Being that this is the first one, unfortunately, it's also scar tissue, and that is, how can we improve when we've never had to deal with this before? So we have to look at the parking minimums. We have to say, come before the council, it's a case-by-case basis. How can we make sure that when it's true affordable housing, that we can do what we need to do to help improve? Because these units, they cost the same amount of money as the ones that are being built everywhere. But this organization has come in and put a program together that truly will provide the next step from the ODB facility. And so we can learn from this and go, okay, we made some mistakes. There's some policies that we need to change. And
That's it, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way that Carrie framed out the question, particularly thinking about sort of the lessons we've been learning over time. So dealing with the issues to support our homeless community, we've had to make changes over time. So we started with an emergency shelter, and we were doing the best we could with what our compassion and our hearts told us was right, but found out that was maybe not the best way to help people. So then we made those shifts into the true case management and wraparound service, and trying to put a continuum in place where people can come into shelter, get their feet underneath them, then move into McAdams Haven and get their feet underneath them even more steadily there, and then hopefully transition into apartment complexes or single-family homes throughout our community. So it's a fantastic model. It's taken us a little while to get here, but I love the direction that it's going in. I love the feedback that Carrie was giving on where the problems still stand. So, like Chris said, we have learning to do, and so certainly getting rid of the parking requirements and looking at those fees to see where truly affordable housing could get some breaks that other housing development doesn't.
For sure. Do you want to? We got 20 minutes on the clock.
I hit 20 minutes on the clock.
All right. At some point, we'll have the timer behind us. But okay, let's open up the table. There we go. So that's a great way to kick off. How did we get to this point? I mean, we've seen an increase in homelessness, obviously. There are so many organizations that are in this community that are doing a lot of great work, obviously a lot of great work. I mean, let's just look at that. A lot of them encounter similar roadblocks, not even ones that are trying to build affordable housing, but I mean, heck, famously the Denton Water Project, some of their stations get shut down. And I understand that but we can get into that. How did we get to this point, and how do we honestly get out of it in an emergency scenario, because the homelessness situation is increasing so rapidly? We don't have time to wait 3-4 years to build.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the way that Carrie said that homelessness is a housing problem. I think that often when we start talking about homelessness, we start thinking about all of the problems a person encountered to end up on the street. But first and foremost, when people can't afford to pay the rent or pay a mortgage, that's when they end up without a place to live. So for as many people as we see out on our streets who might be dealing with mental health issues or addiction or disability, there are just as many homeless people who are sleeping in their cars or couch surfing, who are going to a job every day, who are taking their kids to school every day. Our homeless problem isn't just the folks that we see out about on the streets. Our homeless problem is much larger than that, and it is a housing problem.
Well, I know that. Let's see ahead.
Well, I mean, she's not wrong, but I would say that there's a disparity between wages and that we're taught a third of your income needs to be dedicated towards housing of whatever sort, and we've seen a steady decline over my entire lifetime, and definitely therefore over Shannon's, where we have this decline of the ratio of wages to the expenses. And so now many people spend 50% or more. So I think given those circumstances, I think there's an opportunity to look for flexibility. And Carrie alluded to that in her opening dialogue, where we were talking about parking minimums. What are flexible, not necessarily innovative, but just things we haven't been doing that we need to try to throw at this, because it's absolutely, we've been throwing the same tired tools at these things for too long and need to apply new tools.
Thanks for bringing me into this, Brian. Yeah, I think asking how did we get to this point is a pretty privileged question. As someone who lives in Denton, whose rent increased over $400 in the last couple of years, I can tell you pretty quickly how we got to this point. And that is because of landlords and people in this town who prioritize greed over compassion. And we need to start pushing back. We need to start organizing as a community to support not just our homeless people, but the working people who can't afford to live and stay in Denton.
Well, when I ran for mayor the first time in 2014, homelessness was not even a campaign issue. But after that, I convened the Mayor's Task Force on Homelessness, which there were a lot of people doing work with the unsheltered in our community, but they were sort of siloed, doing their own thing, spending a sort of money on duplicative services. So put together a panel of experts. They created this plan that they've been working on since 2016, which culminated in the shelter and the homeless community center out at Loop 288. But I really want to stress this. This community that's being built, that was talked about, it is very unique because it's a permanent, supportive housing community. In other words, these people can move there, they can receive financial services and case management services, and they can stay there. This isn't where they've got to go on to another place, to another situation. It's much cheaper to prevent unsheltered families than it is to deal with them later on. One thing that we did, which is still in existence, I believe, is the United Way's Barriers Fund, which people can contribute to that. And what that does is it helps families that have one-up kind of, you got a medical issue, you got a car repair issue, you got things that happen, because that's where we also need to focus. But this particular project, this is the way that we truly help those who sometimes people are unable to necessarily get to the point where we want to move them in some places, like get your job steady, you're self-sufficient. There's some that are unable to do that, and these kind of facilities help us meet that need. So I think it takes another community conversation that we had a few years ago to bring the experts in this community, the advocates for those unsheltered, developers, community activists, the citizens, to say, where do we go from here? Because we're at a different stage, and I don't even know if it's a stage of failure. I think it's a stage we've come to where we've solved a problem up to this point, and now we're moving to in a different direction to solve a different type of problem, and that is to make it more, to go to the next step, help people truly.
But what are the levers that were you to get elected, that you could actually pull to, because
Sure.
there's so many organizations, and just like her, I mean, they're building a whole complex, and that's a lot of work. But even people that are just on the boots on the ground, they're still running into these walls that are either put up by the city or different situations. That, like, what levers can you pull to really get in there and help these people?
Well, Chris just named a task force that he created to help reduce redundancy and create more efficiency when there were lots of different groups serving folks who are unhoused. And we need that again, because when I get together with folks in our community who are working on this problem, there's a group I've met with at my church where there are church leaders and nonprofit leaders getting together to work on this. Then I went to a different meeting with folks at the city and different nonprofit leaders getting together to work on this. And we need to go back to that task force and kind of get a good handle on what do we have, what are our assets, what are we working with right now where we stand, where do we need to go next, and what are the appropriate roles to play for each of the groups in our community who are working on the problem.
I appreciate that, but I do think it's a little bit idealist. I think that this problem starts by meeting homeless people where they are and asking them what they need. We do have all of these groups, but without that investment, without meeting someone where they are, people are too afraid to approach these resources because they don't know the hidden rules behind trying to ask for help. And it's up to us as city leaders to teach those rules and to make people feel like these resources are accessible to them. That means going out into the community, that means serving people, that means talking to homeless people, that means helping people find the resources that they need in the moment where they are. Because a big piece of this issue that I guess people don't want to talk about is there are mental health components to this, there are health components to this, and people don't want to talk about that because those things cost money, and those things cost us. But the problem is that we have to start investing in that now, because otherwise we're looking at the cost of human lives.
One of the things to piggyback right off Shannon is meeting people where they live, and I love that you stated it that way. I don't think there was pun intended, but it is exactly on point. So good job. But the thing that there's an opportunity for again, I said flexible solutions. A few years ago, there were a lot of, as Angela's alluding to, there was a lot of people and a lot of ideas, and we sort of coalesced on a few of them. And I think to get to this idea of meeting people where they live, you have to have a broad portfolio. So we need the tiny home villages that we didn't do a few years ago that I've been supporting for the last 5 years. We need ODB shelter. We need to do diversionary wraparound support services. It needs to be a yes and it needs to represent the community where they can give and take and move at different levels throughout that, so that they can transition at a pace that matches where they are.
Well, speaking of ODB, I mean, obviously they had to kind of switch gears last year. The point in time count hasn't been officialized. The numbers haven't been released yet. But even going by last year's numbers, ODB doesn't have the space for them in its current form. Overnight shelters, maybe. But even then, there's rules. People are on the blacklist, essentially.
Right.
Where are those people supposed to go? If we open the inclement weather stations or weather centers, but even them, they'll tell you, are insufficient. So when there's an actual emergency, where are these people supposed to go to be safe? Say there's a freeze. Where are they supposed to go? If they're not allowed at ODB,
well,
maybe
but that's
Salvation
where
Army's closed.
That's why I was opposing the cutting back. I understand why we did it. The idea was that there was not enough case management. Sure. We could only support 120-ish case managers. But I think there was an opportunity to realize, and I guess I didn't make the point strongly enough at the time, and that was and Chris said this a second ago, emergency services are so much more, 3, 4, 5 times more costly than diversionary services. You can serve 4 or 5 people for the same amount as sending police and fire and hot teams out into the field. And so the more that we can divert people away, so I think you're exactly right. We're going to end up spending more money during these
but
hot,
this is
heat
not
and cold
new.
events.
I don't mean to cut you off. This is not new information. Thank you.
Right.
This is not new information, though. Like,
No.
can't I veto that. This is not new. But this is not. Thank you. This is not new information, though. Like, studies have shown that forever. Preventative, getting in there before it becomes a problem.
Okay, so I want to make
So why
sure
haven't we done that? Yeah.
There hasn't been the will to do it, and we haven't had the leadership to do it. That's mine.
I disagree with that. I want to make sure I understand what you're really talking about. I want to make sure that I'm clear. Because what you said was inclement weather, like if it's freezing or if it's hot or things such as that. The rules that changed at the shelter in no way precluded that. I mean, the rule change was basically they had an amount, I think it's 120 or 103 people, it was up to 199. That could stay overnight, but they were also, to do that, they would be involved in programs of case management services. They would be involved with job assistance and also housing assistance. So, look, this is a difficult conversation.
And it's complex.
It's
too.
complex.
Really
It's complex, and there's no silver bullet except to continue to try. And so the changes at ODB. I mean, the executive director said, if we don't make some changes to better help the people that we're helping, we're really not helping anyone except just providing a place where they can come. And some people had stayed there for a year and a half. And it wasn't designed to be transitional housing. She said we'd run out of money and we'd have to basically not serve anybody in Denton. Well, that means they shut it down, or the city takes it over, and I think their budget is $3 million. Now, the community can make that decision. So as far as the emergency situations, I think, first of all, if people call and they report to 911 an emergency, EMTs show up. So it's not like people are going without emergency services or emergency cares or transport whatever they need to.
I was speaking more broadly of
they're
emergency.
going day after day. Like
Right.
they went almost every single day in 2025. That is costing us.
Right. Every
Okay.
time the emergency services are called out, we've got a problem. That's more expensive
Sure.
than finding adequate shelter. And there are a lot of folks who can't go to ODB because they've been criminally trespassed there.
Exactly.
So even in an emergency situation, they might not be able to find shelter there because they've been criminally trespassed. And so it's not an option for them. So they actually have nowhere to go. And once Salvation Army fills up, or you've maxed out your stay at the Salvation Army, then you've got nowhere to go. The other group of folks who have absolutely nowhere to go in our community are people who are homeless and need of medical care. So if you are in the hospital and you get discharged and you don't have a place to go, they will give you a go zone over to ODB, but ODB cannot take you because they cannot support healthcare needs. There is no place in Denton County for that. So we've got some really big problems to think about when it comes to homelessness. And I appreciate that you disagreed that we haven't had the leadership or the will to do it, but I don't see it. I haven't seen the leadership or the will on this subject. I've seen a lot of people talking about really nice ideas and wouldn't it be great and how about we do this, but I haven't seen a lot of action. I mean, Brian just said a minute ago, we coalesced around a few ideas and we were moving forward from there. But you haven't, because the experience I've had with organizations is there isn't that a collaboration going on. So whatever this was that you were talking about a minute ago, Brian, that there was coalescing around ideas, it hasn't come to play. It hasn't had any impact. So maybe there was a nice discussion in City Hall, but there has not been action for our community to benefit from.
So sorry, and I
No,
just want to
please.
say you are exactly right, and that's another key part of this, because that's why what's happening with these 84 units of shelter, that's a Band-Aid, because in 2025, our Daily Bread, there were months where they were serving sometimes upwards of 700 people,
Right.
and now we're down to 200, 150, 100. That's a problem. 84 people is a Band-Aid.
Yeah, so where are the other 300 people? And say there's 500, 600 people. If 80% of them have been criminally trespassed for what some of them will have said on record that I wasn't doing anything wrong, that it might be a little arbitrary.
Yep.
Where are they supposed to go? But
I love that we're having a discussion about this, and that's what we need more of in Denton. We need more discussing. We need more people coming together. People in Denton have huge hearts for everyone in our community. People in Denton want to solve this problem. They want to solve this problem, and not because they're uncomfortable with homeless people in the street. They want to solve this problem because their hearts are broken for the people who are on the street. That's why we want to solve this problem. So I know that this community is all for it. What we have to do is have that community conversation. We need to bring people together. We need to get everybody's brain working on it and rowing the boat in the same direction, and then really take some action. Not a lot of talking in City Hall, and then it just fizzles out and gets left to the nonprofits again.
well, we have 5 minutes left, so let's go around the table. What would be a specific here and now, boots on the ground legislation or action a lever that you would pull?
Yeah, I think I appreciate that. That's one of the things I think we're servicing these needs in the county already. The largest amount of unhoused is here. The county seat is here. All the resources are here. Most of the nonprofits are here. So we're already doing it. And one of the things that we made a mistake on, and I was advocating not, and I would push for this going forward as mayor, we need to own the fact that we are the regional provider for a lot of these services, and take what Gary Henderson over at the United Way has proven is a good model that works. It doesn't always, doesn't mean there's not service gaps, but that hub and spoke model is a way of connecting up and stitching together various services, and you can expand that not just to the city of Denton, but to the surrounding communities, Crum, Lil'd, Louisville, Carrollton. We can be where the resources, they may be small in those other cities, but this is an opportunity to not have those folks migrate to Denton and have our services in supporting them. It can be a complete countywide effort where Denton acts as a clearinghouse to get them in and out of the county, and that would make opportunities for county, state, and federal money to get back on the table if we were a regional provider, that we're losing opportunity for money to be on the table right now.
We like money.
Brian, you said this, and I don't know why you didn't bring it up now, but I think we need to start looking at zoning for camps and investing in these camps that can become tiny home villages. This is a way that we can create community that feels like they belong. And when someone feels like they belong, that's when they want to do the work to give back. And it doesn't have to be that hard. It just takes pitching. And I don't know why we're not pitching this session after session, because this is the way to start resolving this.
Mr. Chris?
I think it's very clear from the discussion at this table that that's why we have to have another community-wide conversation. Because I'm going to be honest, Shannon, when you say 84 units for permanent supportive housing is a Band-Aid, I'm just going to have to respectfully disagree with you on that, because there's 84 people that are out in the street that might need mental health, because permanent supportive housing is not people that are just, they need case management services, they need possible medical attention, medical care, help to get to and from their appointments. So I think this goes to show the importance to flush out all the facts, because an 84 unit apartment complex, they didn't say how much it costs, but it's going to be upwards of probably $100 million. I mean, at least it's probably a couple $100,000 a unit or something like that. 20. So we also have what we've got to talk about resources.
I want to make sure Angela gets in here in a second.
How do we maximize the resources? I'm going to save some time so that
Appreciate you.
Well, and I would pick up where you left off, that we've really got to maximize grant funding. That's how the folks who are building McAdams Haven are funding this project. That is a really expensive project, but it's primarily through grant funding. So we should have resources in our city dedicated to searching out those grants. It's left into this nonprofit's hands right now, but we should be partnering with them more intentionally on seeking out the funding we need to build more units like McAdams Haven. The other thing that I actually am going to agree with Chris on is this has to be community driven, and there has to be a role for the citizens of Denton to play. I see countless folks who are out doing their own independent work with the homeless community, right? I mean, they're all around us right now, where they put extra snacks in their car and they go hand things out, or they have too much dinner left over on Sunday and they go out into a park and they hand those things out. People have a passion to work on this. When I was meeting with a group of church leaders and nonprofits, they were talking about a training program that the city of Plano has done, where they've trained community volunteers to be prepared to staff city facilities during inclement weather. So the problem we've always heard in Denton, we can't open the Civic Center when it gets below freezing because we can't staff it. Well, let's train up a group of community volunteers who are ready to come in and staff that property,
Famously,
and we've solved a problem.
That conversation a few months ago, when that issue, so many people said, I will volunteer.
I will be there. Show me where to go. We do need some training behind that. I mean,
Obviously.
willing hearts, I love, that's why I love Denton so much, because of the compassion in the hearts. But let's get a program in place to train these volunteers so that we know when inclement weather is coming. It's going to be in July and August and January and February.
Maybe tonight.
That's when it happens. So we know when it's coming. Let's get the team prepared to serve in those spaces. And that's just one small issue, right? The inclement weather issue. We've got lots of other issues to deal with, lots of gaps to fill, and we have to have a community-driven solution behind it.
Well, I think we can all agree that obviously it's a complicated subject, but in a community conversation is what we need. But we need the follow-through, right? We need concrete ideas. It can't get lost in the bureaucracy. It can't get lost in we need to follow through. So